right. All right. How's everybody doing? Good. My name is Steve Maull. I'm the owner of Maull Biomedical. I got into this industry. I was an Air Force BMEC. I graduated from college. I went to Miami University, graduated from college, and then afterwards, I did not like the job I chose. I became a stockbroker for a company called Stewart James Investment Bankers. Lasted 4 months. Absolutely the worst thing ever. I hated it. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I joined the Air Force, and that's how I became a BMEC. I was in the Air Force for 11 years. I was a BMEC for the first 7, BMEC instructor for the last 4 years. I was in the Air Force. So that's how I got into training. Then when I got out, I wanted to stay in training because I realized I like teaching this stuff more than actually doing it. So when I got out, I went to work for a company called Ditech. Some of the older guys might know what Ditech is. Then I was with them for about 6 years. I taught clinical lab, X-ray, PACS, DICOM, things like that. And then I left them in 2007 and 2008. Started Maull Biomedical, just for doing contrast injector training, and been doing that ever since. The class I'm going to go over right now, this is Introduction to Contrast Injectors, obviously. This is every student that comes to our training, because what Maull Biomedical does is we teach contrast injectors, we teach introduction, operation, and PM maintenance and troubleshooting, that sort of thing. So every student who comes to our class, they have to do this. There's an online version of this course on our website. Every student has to go through that first. So yeah, this course is going to assume that everybody knows. This course assumes that you don't know anything about contrast. It takes it from the very beginning. All right. Now, in the class, you guys mostly imaging, or how many imaging? Imaging. What's the name of the biomed? Okay. To do contrast injectors, even though the contrast injectors are actually in the imaging department, they're really a biomedical equipment. They're a pump. I know that the manufacturers are very, very proud of them, but at the end of the day, it is just a pump. Very fancy pump, but it's a pump. I think my classes are 50-50, biomeds and imaging personnel, and I tell the students you don't have to really know anything about imaging to work on these things. But you do have to know a little bit about imaging to understand what the purpose of them is and how they actually work. So, starting with that, this is everybody's at a common basis, all right? Now, how an X-ray image is actually captured, all right? We have the X-ray table, we have an X-ray table above the X-ray table, and then underneath the table or inside the table, there's some image capturing device. It's either, it used to be film, now it's a DR plate or CR. It's captured digital. Okay? Now, how this works, so the patient's on the table, the radiation comes out of the X-ray tube. Now, the radiation goes into the patient. Some of the radiation is going to get absorbed by the patient. Some of the radiation is going to pass through the patient, right? We need some of both to happen, okay? Because what happens is when those X-rays pass through the patient, strike that digital plate inside the table, it usually be film. Let's think of that digital plate. When radiation strikes that plate, it turns dark. The areas of the plate that get hit by X-rays, they turn dark. The areas that don't get any X-rays struck or hit by X-rays, those areas stay light or white or clear, okay? So we have to have both penetration and absorption of X-rays into and through the patient. Because if you think about it, if all the radiation we fired into the patient were just absorbed by the patient and none of it hit the plate, then you'd have no image, to be clear. If all the radiation hit the patient, went through a patient, the entire plate got hit by radiation, the entire image would be dark. Okay, so you have to have some penetration and some absorption. Now, the odds that that X-ray photon, that X-ray particle, will be absorbed by the patient or not depends on the density and the thickness of body parts that patient or that X-ray photon strikes. Okay, the thicker and the denser the body part, the more likely that X-ray photon is to be absorbed by that X-ray photon. So that's why on your typical X-ray image, bones show up as white or very light areas on the X-ray image because the radiation that struck the bones of the patient, the bones absorb the radiation, so those parts of the plate that were underneath the bony structure didn't get hit by any X-rays or very few X-rays, so those areas stay light. The thinner, less dense portions of the body, muscles, skin tissue, organs, and things like that, X-rays have little trouble passing through those things. So those body parts get bombarded with X-rays, pass through, and those body parts underneath those parts of the X-ray film or plate get struck by a lot of radiation, and those turn dark. Okay? Everybody understand? And I'm not sweating because I'm nervous. I'm sweating because I'm from Ohio. And even 70 degrees out there, this humidity is wiping me out. All right, so that's the basics. Now, what this is about. Blood vessels don't typically show up on X-ray. Most of the time, that's fine. They don't care. I'm not looking for blood vessels. Right? I'm looking for broken bones, things like that. Most of the time, but sometimes they do care. Sometimes I do want to see the blood vessels. That's why we're doing this. But the problem is, blood vessels are neither thick nor dense. X-ray photons have little trouble passing right through an artery or a vein. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to put something in an artery or vein that will absorb the X-rays and make that blood vessel show up on the image. Right? That's what these machines do. The liquid that's we inject into the patient that's in this syringe. There's two kinds of contrast space. We can talk about that a little bit. But the liquid we're injecting into the patient during the X-ray procedure. It's not like we, during pre-op, we give the patient a shot and then they go in and get the X-ray. This literally has to be done during the actual X-ray procedure. Right? We're going to fire this contrast fluid into the arteries or veins that are in the area of interest, and we're going to X-ray. And while the fluid is in that artery or vein, we're going to X-ray the patient, and that contrast fluid will absorb the radiation. So now that blood vessel, that artery or vein, will show up very well on that image. Right? And what I've just described to you is referred to as angiography. Angio means blood, ography means immuno. Okay. Now, what everybody, just make sure everybody's aware of it. You have a manual that's basically going to follow this if you want to follow that, and then just some propaganda, the folder left everybody. Right. But the book that everybody gets basically follows this. All right. I'll be honest, I used to teach this class probably 20 times a year. This is the first time I've taught this class in about 5 years. Some of the stuff I might be making up. See if you can figure out which parts. All right. So like I said, what I just described to you is angiography. It's a procedure performed with blood vessels after injecting them with the contrast fluid, the radiopaque dye that outlines them on the X-ray image. But this right here, this is actually a fluoroscopic image. This is kind of the opposite of a radiographic image. A radiographic image, the background is light and the objects of interest are dark. Or the background is dark and the objects of interest are light. Fluoroscopy works the exact opposite way. So the background is light, objects of interest are dark. Doesn't matter to us. Contrast fluid works the same both ways. All right. Now, while there's many models of these contrast injectors, they can all be put in one of 3 different types. There's CT, there's angio, and there's MRI. Right? Those are the 3 kinds of contrast injectors. There's probably 15 models of contrast injectors in the world, but every one of them can be put in one of these 3 categories. These are the systems using the contrast to inject fluid into the patient to improve or sometimes make it possible to view the blood vessel, the images of the blood vessel in the soft tissue. The images that are produced referred to as angiograms. Yes. Now, the contrast that gets injected into the patient, I mentioned this earlier, there's 2 kinds of fluid. Right? There's iodine-based fluid, and there's gadolinium-based fluid. Iodine-based fluid is used for the CT and the angio injectors. The gadolinium fluid is used for MRI. I'll talk about why that is here in just a little bit. CT and MRI injectors use IV needles to inject the fluid in the patient. Just goes into a vein, usually in the patient's arm or something like that. So CT and MRI injectors always use IV needles, never catheters. Angio injectors, like this one right here, this is Mark 7, Midwest angio injector. Angio injectors always use catheters. They don't use needles. When they're using a catheter, they're actually snaking the catheter through an artery or vein up to a specific point in the patient's body. Oftentimes, this is the heart. So they'll take the tip of that catheter, go through femoral artery or femoral vein, and snake it up guided into the one of the 4 chambers of the heart, and actually fill the heart with contrast fluid during the actual imaging procedure to view one or all 2 chambers of the heart during the actual procedure. They used to inject the patients with more contrast because some contrast injectors actually had 2 syringes on them. The predecessor to this one was the Provis. The Provis actually has the capability of having two 200 milliliter contrasts or 200 milliliter syringes on it. Like I said, this is the replacement for that. You'll notice it only has one syringe on it. I think they realized that they can't just be firing 200, 300, 400 milliliters of contrast fluid into the patients. Contrast fluid, some people do have bad reactions to contrast. Contrast fluid is an iodine-based fluid, so if you're allergic to shellfish, something like that, you will probably have an allergic reaction to contrast. Just over the next 12 to 24 hours, the contrast that's injected into the patient is just naturally eliminated through the patient's kidneys. Now, there's 3 dogs, basically. There's 3 dogs in this fight for contrast injectors, at least here in the United States. Europe has a couple manufacturers that don't have any equipment over here, but here in the United States, Biomedical, by far the biggest dog on the market. I mean, by far, like 80% of all contrast injectors used in hospitals in the United States are the Biomedical contrast. Their latest, greatest ones, the Mark 7, Stellans. This one, oh, I told you it's been a while. No more than good. Oh my gosh, did I do that? The Xperia is their latest, greatest MRI injector, which just came out about 1 year ago, right now here in the US. Until then, the second biggest manufacturer of contrast injectors, way behind, but they still have a presence, is, are they still called Tyco now? What's their name now? It's Gurbet, yeah. Right. They started off as Levofloxacin, then they became Mallinckrodt, and they became Tyco, and now they go So get back to the beginning of the last, see if the name's changed again. They make good contrast injectors. They're just not nearly as big a market share as MedRat. Their main ones, the Biomedical is their main CT injector. Star is their main injector. And then last but not least, way behind in the market, but there are some out there, is Bracco. Bracco ECM. Their biggest one is their assist contrast injectors. To be honest, I think what they're doing, Ryan right here, actually the guy in ISS, he knows more about these things, or ISS. And by the way, just if you want to throw in some extra little tidbits of information while I'm talking, you guys not say. But I believe what Bracco is doing, because their assists, the assist injectors, they're popping up a lot more in the market now. I think what they're doing is, I think they're, could be wrong, but I think they're giving the hospitals the injector and just signing them up to service contracts and fluid contracts. Because in the last year or two, they really, I'm starting to get way more calls about training on the assist than I ever got in the first 10 years doing this company. So for some reason, all of a sudden, the market is getting a whole bunch of these assist injectors, and I think that's a lot of clinical lab companies give the hospital laboratory equipment. You just have to buy radios from us, saying it's not a service contract. I'm pretty sure that's what's practice. But
Bracco's always done that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, FDA or somebody got involved and put the kibosh on giving away the equipment if you buy the disposables. So I think what we're actually seeing is the opposite. People are now being forced to buy the equipment. So that's assuming off the contract. That's why we're seeing a lot more of it ourselves.
Because now
they have to buy it.
Okay. So they're not tied to the service contract now.
In some capacity, yeah. I'm sure they're still working around that limitation, but yeah, that's.
All right. Now, the contrast fluid, the intravenous contrast fluid here highlights the blood vessels and enhances the structures of the organs. Once it's injected into the patient, the bloodstream, it will circulate throughout the body. That's one thing you have to remember. When we're doing this procedure, there is a timing issue. Okay? So let's say we're injecting contrast into this vein right here. All right. When this vein is injected with this contrast fluid, this is a living patient on the table. Their heart is beating. So when this contrast fluid is injected into this vein right here, it's going to be there for literally 1 second. Heart beats and it moves. Heart beats again, it moves again. All right. So there is some coordination between the actual imaging system taking its image and the injection of the contrast. Once it's injected into the patient, it circulates throughout the bloodstream. The extra beam passing through the patient, in the case of X-ray and CT images, or the RF energy released from the patient, in the case of MRI is weakened, all right? Not as much radiation is coming out, not as much RF energy is coming off the patient in case of MRI. The anatomical structures are enhanced by this process. They show those lighter areas on the image. This right here, this is an image of the heart. Okay? Now back here, you can see the heart in the back is a little bit of a faded, darkened out, darker gray than the forefront here. This giant artery right here coming off the heart, that's the aorta. Okay. Now your heart is generally about the size of your fist. Okay. And the aorta is generally about the size of your thumb. And the heart has a lot more mass to it and tissue structure to it than the aorta does. But you'll see here, X-rays had little trouble passing through the heart because the heart is mostly darkened out. But that aorta is very white and bright. So that aorta was full of contrast at the moment this image was taken. So you can see practically no radiation passed through that aorta. Much smaller structure, but it absorbed all the radiation, whereas the larger structure behind it, the heart, X-rays pass right through it to mostly darken it out. Now, I mentioned this earlier. X-ray and CT injectors. They both use X-ray tubes. Same radiographic technology. X-rays come out, the X-ray tube, and go into the patient. Some absorb, some penetrate, some penetrates. Now, the contrast fluid, like I mentioned earlier, the contrast fluid that we're going to inject into patients for CT and angio injectors is an iodine-based contrast fluid. Now, I don't know why. It has something to do with the atomic structure of the iodine atom, but there's something about iodine that absorbs radiation. Just hit the I believe button and say, all right, iodine blocks X-rays. Right? So that main ingredient in contrast fluid for your CT and angio injectors is iodine. Now, for MRI, does anybody know how MRI works? Got any MRI guys in here? MRI girls in here? Really? Oh, I can literally make this up. All right. So there's a little troll inside the MRI machine. Now, how this really works, and this is going to sound just weird, how an MRI image is actually taken. Right? Best way to describe this is the Mickey Mouse version of explaining how MRI works. Okay. Your body is 70% water, right, which is H2O. Now, the key component to producing the image here from your body is the hydrogen atoms. Your body has tons and tons and tons of hydrogen atoms. The hydrogen atom has one electron, if you guys remember your high school science, one electron in its orbital shell around the nucleus. The nucleus has a proton and neutron in it. The rotating electron has one electron. Okay. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take the patient, and we are going to slide the patient into the MRI magnet, all right, a gantry, a very, very powerful magnet. It's measured in Tesla. The Earth's magnetic pole is something like 0.5 Gauss, all right? Now 1 Gauss, half a Gauss. 1 Tesla is 1,000 Gauss. And most of your MRI systems are 3.5 Tesla, right? So literally 6,000 to 7,000 times the Earth's magnetic pole, okay? So the reason we put the patient in this gigantic magnet, all right? When we slide the patient in the magnet, that hydrogen atom is orbiting around the electron, or that electron is orbiting around the nucleus. It's a negatively charged electron. When it gets put in that incredibly powerful magnetic field, what happens is it gets stuck in either the North Pole or the South Pole end of that electron. Just depending on where it is in its orbit, when it gets caught, as we slide the patient in, the electron gets trapped in its orbital shell. Or the North Pole or South Pole. Now, what we're going to do, we actually fire RF pulses into the patient during this time, literally thousands of pulses per second. Now, what these pulses do is, and we're going to slow this down in real time, right? So I have my electron here up in its orbital shell, and when the RF pulse is applied, the electron recesses off its axis. It's like pulling the string of a bow, right? The electron slides off its axis. Then when the RF pulse is removed, the electron precesses back to its orbit, or back to its stuck in the North Pole or South Pole. Now, when it precesses back, that's like letting go of the bow. That electron or that atom is going to give off an RF pulse back. So we're pulling it off its axis with an RF pulse. Then we remove the RF pulse. The electron precesses back, and an RF pulse gets sent back out to my MRI system. Okay? We're literally going to do that thousands of times per second. That's 20 or 30 minutes. And all these little RF pulses that get collected by the MRI system makes up the MRI image. Okay? Now, the greater the recess off its axis, and when it recesses back, the more it recesses off, the stronger the RF pulse it gives up when it snaps back. All right. Now, what the contrast fluid in an MRI injector does, it dampens the RF's effect on hydrodynamics in that part of the body. So now, with no contrast, we'll say the electron recesses this much, right? With the RF or with the contrast fluid, recesses that much. So now what happens is, when the RF pulse is taken away, it's just a little blip. You can set that. So instead of strong RF pulse back from those electrons, it's a very weak one, or no RF pulse at all. Weaker RF pulses produce lighter areas of the image. Stronger RF pulses produce darker areas of the image. Okay. Now, remember, in CT and angio, it's an iodine-based contrast fluid that's inside those. It's the main ingredient. Iodine has no effect on hydrodynamics. So for angio or for MRI injectors, we have to use a different ingredient, and that's gadolinium. Again, I have no idea why it does it, but gadolinium produces the effect that I just described. Gadolinium is in the area of interest. That's something to the hydrogen atoms in the area where they're basically impervious to those RF pulses, making them basically not giving any signal at all. Produce dark. All right. Any questions? This is really way more than you need to know, but I got to fill out my hand. So, you guys want to talk about the three godfathers of? No, yeah. Any questions? Any other? Did you guys believe all that? So good. I don't know. The story's getting better. All right. Now we'll actually start getting more onto the actual injectors. Now, one of the things I need to talk about, one of the things that it takes some time to describe. There's something called pressure limiting. This is an aspect of contrast injectors that it seems like you would know what it is, all right, from just the name of it. You think, okay, you're only allowed to have so much pressure. That's basically it, but it's a little more complicated. Now, when we do an injection, all right, let's say, for this. Let's do one. I'll explain all this later. All right, on the injector. Yes. All right. So I just programmed a flow rate of 1 milliliter per second. On this particular model, it can go all the way up to a flow rate of 40 milliliters per second. But I'm going to program a flow rate of 1 milliliter per second. Now, if I do an injection into a patient's blood vessel at this speed, okay, there is some pressure built up inside the syringe during the injection because I have connector tubing coming out of the syringe, and that leads to an even thinner catheter that's in the patient's femoral artery. Right, so there's some pressure built up in the syringe. All right, some back pressure built up in the syringe. Now, let's go. Glasses. All right, now I'm going to crank it up to a flow rate of 20 milliliters per second, literally 20 times as fast. Obviously, a much faster injection. Now, between those two injections, a very slow 1 milliliter per second trickle of an injection, and very fast, and that's at like half the speed. This machine literally goes twice as fast. Which of those two injections is going to create more back pressure in the syringe during the actual injection? It's the faster injection, right? I mean, if I'm going this slow, there's really no pressure felt in the syringe. But if I try to blast, let's say I select 50 milliliters per second, so I'm going to shove this is a 150 milliliter syringe. I'm going to shove all the fluid in this syringe out of this entire syringe in 3 seconds. That's a huge amount of pressure inside that syringe during the actual injection. Everybody follow? All right, now, one of the things that the operator has to select during the actual injection is a protocol called pressure limit. There are 3 things that have to be selected: flow rate, volume, There's other things you can select, but those can actually be left blank. There's 3 things that every single injection, the operator has to program something in. What rate, how fast the injection is going to be, the volume, how much we're going to inject, and the pressure limit. Now, the pressure limit, people get the idea that, well, the pressure limit is sort of a safety device for the patient. It is, but it isn't really, right? It's a safety device to keep our syringe from exploding during the actual injection, okay? So, every injection, what we will do is we'll say, okay, don't go over 600 PSI. This one will actually go up to 1200 PSI. 1200 PSI. 1,200 pounds per square inch. Yeah, and so think about that. Is that really for the patient? I mean, you're biomeds. You guys work on infusion pumps, right? What's the inclusion pressure on an infusion pump? Maybe know off the top of your head, roughly. 6 PSI, 8 PSI, 10, you know? I mean, when an infusion pump hits 8 PSI, shut it down, stop, whoa, wait, what are you doing, dude? You're gonna kill the guy. So no, of course not. 1,000 PSI, 1,000, no, that is not getting to the patient, okay? But what I have, we have connector tubing that connects to the system here. That connector tubing goes to the patient. There's a little block on the patient where the catheter is connected to. So then from the catheter, which is even thinner tubing than the connector tubing here, that is what's inside the patient. You have to sort of go back to your high school science again and talk about physics. In my syringe here, this syringe on its own could not take, this piece of plastic, it could not take 1,000 PSI. It couldn't take 500 PSI. It would rupture, all right? So for angio injectors, this particular type, we put the syringe in this very hard plastic casing. It's called a pressure jacket. And this pressure jacket literally holds the syringe together during the actual injection, okay? So, what happens is during the injection, yes, inside the syringe, and let's say, for instance, we do a peak out. Let's say we get 1,200 PSI in the syringe here. But when we go from this 1.5 inch wide bore here down to this 1 millimeter wide bore here, we literally go from 1,000 PSI to 2 PSI. And the closer we get to the end of the catheter, where the fluid's actually coming out inside the patient, we get closer and closer and closer to 0 PSI. All right? So no, the 1,000 PSI is in the syringe. By the time we get to the connector tubing and the catheter tubing, we are well in the low single digits. Okay? Now the fluid's coming out can be coming at a very high rate, but the back pressure on the tubing in the catheter in the IV needle is very, very low. All right, so that's a big misconception. Sometimes even the operators have that. One of the things that I don't think we get it so much anymore because, to be honest, well, I was gonna say because a lot more biomeds are trained. But back in the day, I used to get phone calls a lot, where the operators would be member calls say the system's overpressured, and the operator, what it would end up being was the operator was setting the pressure tube, right? So they pick a flow rate of 20, and then they say, they're supposed to pick a pressure limit of 800 PSI. And I'm like, 800 PSI, it's gonna hurt. Let's just go down like 100 PSI, right? Well, at higher flow rates, no, 100 PSI won't get you anywhere near pressure limit, all right? It'll hit 100 PSI before the fluid even gets 1 inch out of the tubing by that time, all right? Does anybody have any idea? Take a guess if my pressure limit is hit, if my injector hits my pressure limit that I've set, what does the machine do? Just logical guess. Stops. That is the logical guess. I set you up for failure. It does not stop. We don't want the injector to stop, okay? Because other than shooting fluid into the patient at this particular time, what else are we firing into the patient? What room are we in? X-rays, yeah. We're not only shooting firing contrast fluid into the patient, we're shooting X-rays into the patient as well. When my injector stops, we've got to do it again, which means all the radiation we fired into the patient was for nothing. Needless patient dose. All right. So what happens? The injector doesn't stop. So if the injector doesn't stop, let's say we set the pressure limit to 600 PSI. Right? We're doing the injection, and my My injector system says I hit 600 psi in the syringe. If it doesn't stop, what does it do to keep pressure from going up and up and up? Slows down. It's going to slow the flow rate down. That way, because I mean, say we're shooting a flow rate of 10 milliliters per second, we get our pressure limit. It'll slow it down to 9 milliliters per second. All right. We might still get a good image. I mean, we might not. We may have to do it again anyway. But if the injector stops, we're definitely doing it again. So what the machine will do is it'll just slow the flow rate down, possibly salvage this actual image. Right. So that's why we don't want it to stop. It'll just slow it down. Because you guys saw the difference between a 1 milliliter per second flow rate and 20 milliliter per second flow rate. The primary determinant of how much pressure is in the syringe is the flow rate. The higher the flow rate, the greater the pressure. Or the greater the pressure gets built up in the syringe. Yeah.
Be able to change the PSI, change the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So also, is there the length and the diameter of the tube also change?
Yeah, those are, like I said, the main thing that affects how much pressure is built up in the syringe during the injection is the flow rate. That has by far the biggest effect. The other things that will also have an effect, the length of the connector tubing, the length of the catheter, and also the diameter, the width of the connector tubing. The thinner the tubing, the higher the pressure. The longer the tubing, the higher the pressure. But while those do have an effect on the pressures, it's much smaller than the effect of the speed of the injection.
So,
Yeah,
I was going to say that they have a different PSI and different PSI for different patients. So you're going to use the same pressure for all the patients. How
good question. What is it that determines? All right, so I have 3 things I have to select. What was that?
That's what
Let's talk angio injectors, right? Again, there's 3 things that the operators have to select: flow rate, volume, pressure. Flow rate and volume, that's determined by the procedure we're doing, the size of the patient, which body part we're looking at. Right? That's what determines flow rate and pressure. And typically, they have protocols stored in memory. And this particular injector, I mean, most of the injectors, they're set up to have like 50 or 100. I think the Envision, which is an older CT, they have like 300 different slots for memory. And they use like 5, maybe 10. That's it. Most of the procedures, when the patient's on the table, they don't manually dial in the flow rate and the volume and the pressure that he did. They pull it up from memories, cardiac AP or something like that. And that's the protocol to shoot, right? So the flow rate and volume, that's determined by the procedure we're shooting and the size of the patient. Most of the time they leave it, but if the patient's unusually small or unusually large, they might increase or decrease the volume, right? But how do they know what pressure level to pick? How do they know that level? Right? Let me ask you this, right? There's 3 things in my fluid exchanger. This is amazing. I'm taught this for 5 years. Seeing it songs, I'll come back. There's 3 things in the chain here, right? There's the syringe, there's the connector tubing, and then there's the catheter, all right? Of those 3 things, syringe, connector tubing, catheter, which do we least want to explode during the actual injection? The catheter, that's inside the patient. That's what determines the pressure limit. Catheters have a pressure rating. When they get the catheter out of the packaging stuff, one of the items of information on that package is pressure rating, right? Or max pressure. Right? Whatever that number is, that's what they put on it. There's no need to go any less than that, because I was talking about that earlier, and I think I sidetracked myself. The operators, they'll dial in the protocol, and the protocol calls for 800 psi or something like that. 800 psi. Now let's just do 100 psi. They don't understand the concept of this, the pressure limiting. So what's going to happen is they can make a pressure limit way too low. They start the injection, the injector gets its pressure limit, it slows way down because the flow rate is what's determining the pressure limit. Then the operators will either say, they'll call in, if they're paying attention, they'll say the injector's not injecting properly, shooting way too slow. They really don't know what they're doing is they'll say my image is too dark. Well, the image is too dark because the contrast that we expected to get to the patient is not getting to the patient. So they're not even noticing the injector's not injecting properly. I really don't get that phone call very much anymore. I used to get it quite a bit, but to be honest, it's been years since I got that. rule of thumb, always set the pressure limit to the highest you can set it to. There is no reason to set it any lower than what that catheter or that IV needle is rated at. Because again, the only place that pressure is truly felt is here. Now, okay, so then why is the catheter rated at 1,000 PSI, for instance, right? Is it ever possible that I could get 1,000 PSI to the catheter or to the needle? Yes. All right. As long as we have flow through the needle or through the catheter, everything I said is true. Very, very high pressure, very, very low pressure right now. But if there's an occlusion somewhere, anywhere down the line, if the catheter is clogged, if the connective tubing is occluded or pinched or something like that, then pressure here is equal to pressure everywhere up to the point of the occlusion. So, worst case scenario, if something has happened and we have a clogged catheter or something like that, something is actually, there is debris, it happens. There's debris in the syringe or in the connective tubing and it hits that catheter tubing and it gets clogged. Now we do have 1,000 PSI from the syringe all the way up to wherever that occlusion is. So it is possible to get that high pressure to the catheter. So that's why they put ratings on the catheters and the IV needles. They don't exceed this pressure because if, worst case scenario, we get the pressure here, it can't handle anything else. Or it can't handle it. So.
Do they ever inject these things
Right?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, because they'll do that, especially in cardiac procedures or in angio, where they might want to flush it or hand inject a small amount or something like that. Maybe they need to refill.
That's right, because whenever an issue like 10 years ago about somebody had some knockoff manifolds, or not, I remember that, yeah. Some third-party company made manifolds and they were, didn't work properly. Injector. You remember that?
So how the viscosity of the actually inside the blood and correlated to the viscosity of the.
Well, it's not necessarily so much the viscosity of the blood, it's the viscosity, we're still talking about pressure, the viscosity of the contrast fluid. Okay. Contrast fluid it's clear, it's something silly. This doesn't happen very often, but it's been years since I got this phone call, but I usually get a phone call once a year. I know Brian's company used to get the phone calls. Somebody killed a patient with an injector because they filled him with air. And lawyers get involved, obviously, and sometimes they would call me to be like the disinterested third-party expert. Can you to depose you and explain this? They would call Brian. To be honest, I just say call Brian. I was getting to the point that the contrast is clear, and it usually happens with the Stellant, the CT injector. That's probably the most common because the Stellant it's used a lot. It has 2 syringes. They're popping syringes off and on all day. I can see 1 in a million shot, but I can see an operator popping syringes on, fills one, and zones out, forgot to fill the other. And from across the room, through the window of the control room, you see 2 syringes and the fluid's clear. Yeah, fill them. I always thought they should put some tint of a color in it so you can immediately see, oh, why is that one clear? But they don't. But anyway, the contrast fluid, iodine fluid anywhere, the contrast for angio and CT injectors, iodine, it is very thin, but it's not as thin as water. There is a slight syrupy texture to it, all right? Slight syrupy texture, okay? So one of the things they do to lower the viscosity of the fluid is they use warmers. Or they'll take the contrast and keep the contrast in a warming cabinet until it's time to use it. But they want to keep the contrast at about 37 degrees Celsius, which is body temperature. So what happens, everybody would know what the thing is common knowledge. What happens to syrup when you warm it up? You heat it up, it becomes more runny, right? It flows more easily. That's the purpose of the heaters that go on the pressure jackets. Now, having said that, they don't use them as much as they used to, especially in CT for a couple of reasons. But one of the things the heaters will not do, I think they do actually call them heat maintainers now. They used to be referred to strictly as heaters. If I take the contrast fluid and fill my syringe up with room temperature contrast fluid, it's like 70 degrees in here. If I fill this up with 70-degree contrast, then I slap a warmer over it. It's literally just a plastic sleeve that goes over the syringe like this. It's not going to heat the contrast up. It will not raise the temperature of the contrast. But if you put warm contrast in, then slap the heat maintainer on it, it will help keep the contrast at 98 degrees, 37 degrees Celsius longer. Okay, so it's not unusual now for departments not to use the heaters because the procedures, especially like I said for CT procedures have gotten much faster than they were 10, 15 years ago with helical CT, spiral CT, multi-slice CT. A procedure that used to take 5 minutes 10 years ago, 20 years ago is 30 seconds. So a lot of times they don't use the heaters, but that's the purpose of the heaters, to help keep the contrast heated up, warmed up at the 37 degrees Celsius to help a little bit. It doesn't have a big effect, but it does help keep the viscosity of the fluid lower so it flows more easily. It's no big deal through the tube. When it gets to the very, very thin IV needles and the catheter tubings, that's when every little bit helps. All right.
Is there a possibility that you can get air bubbles in the tubing?
Oh yeah, yep, it's possible. It's possible, but the I mean the operators are, they're trained how to get those out. One of the this injector is one of them. Some contrast injectors, the older contrast injectors, you can just fill the contrast injector up however you want. You can fill it up, shoot it into the patient. You're supposed to, whenever you're filling the syringe, you're always supposed to fill the head up, and then when you inject, you're always supposed to fill the head down. Now, older injector models, most of them, yeah, you're supposed to do that, but they don't care. I mean, if you want to shoot this thing, point straight up in the air, it would let you do it. The newer contrast injectors now, and this is one of them, it won't let you do that. It makes the operator fill the syringe up, and makes them move the plunger forward 5 milliliters to purge the air out of it. Then, at one last resort, it won't shoot unless the injector head is pointed straight down. That way, if any air bubbles do end up still trapped in there, they'll hopefully flow to the non-business end of the syringe and not get ejected. But, go ahead, I'm sorry.
How often do you place this?
Every patient. The syringe, here in the United States, some countries that's not the case. Canada, I think, is not the case. They'll use the same syringe over and over again. But here in the US, the syringe, the connector tubing is swapped out with every single patient. Which is always odd to me because I'll get a phone call every now and then, and it's an operator error. And they're describing how the syringe is not acting the way it's supposed to. And I can tell when you're reusing a syringe, you're not supposed to reuse the same syringe over years. When you're done, you put a brand new syringe in, and all the stuff you're telling me won't happen. So I know you're using the same syringe again. You're not supposed to do that. It's like a ball. But to answer your question, the syringes are swapped out from every single patient. All right. Yeah.
Is there ever an issue with like lot number for the syringes? We just tell them to use different blocks with different lot number.
No, but the legal foreshot injectors, the Group A injectors, one of those, they have a barcode reader. One of them also has a barcode reader, and it won't use the same syringe again.
The OptiVantage has RFID, an RFID option.
They don't use it a whole lot, but yeah, there's when they put the syringe in, the syringe, and it's only for pre-filled syringes. Most syringes come empty in the operators fill them themselves. But some manufacturers, or they unfortunately did some pre-filled syringes, and it might have a barcode on it, and so it'll read it and automatically know the exact kind of contrast that we have. And then if it sees that barcode again, it won't let you shoot it. That's most hospitals don't like to deal with that. So that's not a very commonly used syringe package, but yeah, I think it's more popular. Asians use those more because I think they were pulling those syringes from the U.S. market, sending them to Asia because they were running out years ago.
Yeah, I don't know that, but I definitely agree with you. It's not commonly used. We've seen a handful with those RFIDs. Most of them are just regular syringes.
Yeah, I mean, you can use a regular syringe with the RFID. Just doesn't read it. No. The OptiVantage is the only one I know that it can tell if you have this. Well, this one does too. The OptiVantage, which is one of the Group A CT injectors, that one knows that you didn't swap the syringe out. It won't let you shoot, but literally just take the syringe out, put the same one back in and shoot. But for the most part, the injectors don't. For the most part, the injectors don't. No. No. Matter of fact, that's one of the very common cheat codes. When I teach the Out Advantage, there's a cheat code that we use, and that's part of it. Pop the old syringe out, put the new syringe in, do two more things, and sanction, which is what we need for the biomeds for us. When we're doing the service, that works for us because you don't get a new syringe every single time you go do it. Yeah, you'll go get the first time you go to a PM, you'll ask them the department when I have a syringe. They literally have cases of them. They should have a problem giving you the syringe. You'll keep that syringe, use that dozens and dozens and dozens of times. All right, but the operators on real patients, those are one-time syringes.
Are you using UPS for this? Does it connect to UPS? Not Charlie Carl's.
No.
The whole system all.
No. Sometimes, most of the time it's plugged into the wall. Sometimes it is connected. It gets power from the imaging system. The imaging system has to be turned on. But no else. At least I've never.
We've recommended it occasionally, only for certain facilities that have power issues. But generally speaking, the answer is no. There's no reason to not.
Yeah. If power goes out, it doesn't do much to it. It loses power. Lose power. This particular imaging procedures that have to be repeated anyway. All right. Any questions on pressure limiting? How are we supposed to 130? Okay.
Does this thing have a pressure sensor?
No, actually what it does is it measures motor current feedback. During the actual injection, there's a circuit that's monitoring the current drop on the motor, and that's how it determines what pressure that it's actually shooting. Now some injectors do have pressure sensors in them, but I think they all still use the motor current feedback.
MedRed uses both these days. They have a strain gauge.
The strain gauge?
And then they also do the motor current, so they're comparing the two.
Okay.
And then looking at the delta.
Okay. Yep. All right. All right. We went through all this. So the flow rate, things that affect pressure limit. We talked about this. The flow rate, the thickness of the fluid in it, viscosity, and the length and diameter of the catheter tubing. All right, now, every contrast injector, and I think this is true, I can't think of any exceptions. Every single contrast injector system has 3 parts. None of them have 2, none of them have 4, I'll have 3, right? There's the injector head, there's the display, and there's what's generically referred to as the main unit or the power. Right? Those are those 3 components.
What about for the pull-up scanners? We have a support box on the pull-up frame. Put the stones and adapter.
Oh, the interface.
Okay, so if it's,
interface.
yeah, if on the stelnets, and I have the Marcin and the probes as well, if it's actually interfaced with the imaging system, there's literally a cable that goes from the back of this into some board in the imaging system, and there will be some box, electronic box, that allows the two to talk to each other. And I'll actually talk more about interfacing here just a little bit, but that's not really considered one of the components. All right, the syringes. I already talked about the syringes in some detail. I'm thinking I left it out. Some of one syringe filled contrast. Some contrast injectors, they do actually use 2 syringes, 1 syringe. Angio injectors don't. Angio injectors always have just 1 syringe filled with contrast. Some CT injectors and all MRI injectors have 2 syringes. One is filled with contrast, the other one is filled with saline. For CT injections, there's several purposes of the saline syringe, but I don't want to say it's neat to know, it's not really important for us, but some procedures for CT and MRI, they want to inject, not both of them at the same time usually, although that's possible in some systems, but they usually will inject some contrast or some saline, followed by contrast, followed by saline, to keep what's called a tight bolus, keep the contrast from dissipating into the blood more quickly. Sometimes they'll do a chase and a CT chase, and they'll literally just, the CT image will move the patient through as this contrast bolus is this liquid ball of contrast moves through the patient, CT system will follow it. So if the final procedure, the final image looks like the entire patient was lit up with contrast. But it was only 60 milliliters, and they just CT and the imaging system just follow that same 60 milliliters as it travels through the patient. Sometimes they'll also use it to flush out a particular body part with the saline solution. But angio injectors always is one. Some CT injectors have both. Actually, nowadays most CT injectors have two. If you have a CT injector and it's just one syringe, then it's most likely either being used at a vet clinic or a single slice. But do those even exist anymore? Single slice CTs? I don't know. But like 4 slice and 16 slice CTs. I mean, if you have a 64 slice CT system, the quality of the images that they're going to produce, you need a dual head CT system. There's no point in having a single head CT injector on a 64 slice or better CT system. It's going to be a dual head CT injector. And to be honest, over 90+% of all CT injectors are dual heads. There's not that many single heads out there. There are, but not nearly as many as dual heads. All right. Syringe heater. I already talked about the syringe heaters. And now these 3 things here, I talked about this earlier. Flow rate, volume, and pressure. These are the 3 things that the operator has to select. They have to pick something that for each one of these protocols. Some injectors are capable of, and got myself earlier. Some contrast injectors are capable of injecting both contrast and saline. The injection of each fluid is programmed separately and is each considered a separate phase. Now, remember I set the tone years ago, and I don't know how I'm going to change, but remember I came out with their angio injector back in the 50s, I think. And they refer to them as levels, all right? Levels. Levels. All right. Let me explain this first. All right. Okay. Put this. All right. All right, I don't know if you guys can see this. I want you to see this, all right? But on my monitor here, all right, on my monitor, I don't know what's going to happen here. Right here, all right, I have my flow rate here. It's set to a flow rate of 20 milliliters per second and a volume of 60 milliliters. So now if I arm the injector and I hit the inject switch, we'll shoot that shot, and then it'll be over. Right? Injector will disarm itself, and we're ready for the next patient. We're ready to set up another shot. Right? That is a single phase injection. We're just going to shoot that one thing. Right? But a multi-phase injection is if I want to do an injection on the patient, and I either want to change fluids, I want to go from saline to contrast, or vice versa, or I want to change the speed of the injection during the actual injection, I have to program another phase. All right. So on this one, for instance, on these numbers here, it says 1, 2, 3, 4. These are my phases. This is the protocol I've set on. So this first column here is my flow rate. The second column here is the volume. So my first row here, that's phase 1. I have a volume or a flow rate of 5, and a volume of 10 milliliters. Then I program in the second phase, and it's makes no sense to do it that way. So the second phase, I'm going to increase the flow rate to a volume of 6 milliliters. I'm going to shoot that for, 6 milliliters per second. I'm going to shoot that for 20 milliliters. Then I go to a third phase. Right? I'm going to change the speed of the injection again. So I'll go down to back to a flow rate of 5 or 20 milliliters. Then I'll end up my fourth phase. I'll shoot a flow rate of 10 milliliters per second for 30 milliliters. All right. That is a multi-phase injection. That's a 4-phase injection. Now, I just picked random numbers to demonstrate that, but The reason you would want to do that, again, like I said, if this is an angio injector, so it just has the one syringe, there's no saline syringe. The only reason you would program a multi-phase or multi-level injection, an angio injector, is want to change the speed of the injection in the middle of the injection. Most of the time, they just change it once. Most of them are just two-phase injections. But they can go up to 3 phases, 4 phases. The Spectris Solaris, Medrad's MRI injector, I think goes up to 6 phases. I don't know if I use that, but it's capable of it. Now, if this were a CT or an MRI injector, you would change your phases if one, I wanted to change the speed of the injection, or if I wanted to switch over to the other fluid. I wanted to shoot 10 milliliters of contrast, and then I wanted to shoot 30 milliliters of saline, something along those lines. That is referred to as a multi-phase injection. Everybody follow? All right. Now, in the very, very beginning, when Medrad came out in, I think it was the 50s, 50s or 60s, they came out with their Mark IV. They referred to that as multi-level injection. They stuck with that. They came out with Mark V, Mark V Plus, Provis. They called it a multi-level injection. Every other injector on the planet referred to it as phases. Even other Medrad injectors call them phases. But if you ever see the term a multi-level injection, that's the older Medrad angio injector. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. The injection beach fluid is programmed separately. So here, let me demonstrate. A little more dramatic. Hold on. I'll put my screen back now. All right, I'll explain what I did to steer in a minute. I did what's called arming the injector. Before you can make this button work, you have to go through some steps to make the injector ready to shoot, which is called arming. And arming, have I check for air? Yes. So you'll see that now we're ready to shoot. My arming light comes on. That's the visual indicator for the operator. Hit that button. Magic's going to happen. Actually, like this. This is a nice one. You'll notice how, I'm just bringing this up. Notice how the display is right side up. Now when I flip it over to shoot it, the display flips over for you. Not every injector model does it. And I flip the head up, so this is its arm. So arm. Right. So we are armed. Now I'm going to shoot 3 for 9. 20, 5, 30, 30. All right, I made a more dramatic protocol. Now, one thing, I won't have to worry here a little bit. The hand switch. For angio injectors, this is universally true. Again, this is an angio injector system. The hand switches for angio injectors are dead man switches. You have to hold the button down the entire injection. Whereas the other two types of contrast injectors, the CT and MRI injectors, there's touch switches. You just hit the button, you can put the switch down, and it goes through the entire injection. Right? So now, if I hold this down, it's going to do 4 injections. It's one injection, but it's going to do 4 different phases. First, flow rate of 3 milliliters per second, flow rate of 10, flow rate of 30, and the injection's over. So 4 different speeds there, all one injection. I'm sure you know how it is. Okay, so that's a multi-level or multi-phase injection. Any questions on that? No, the pressure limit is set to 700 psi. With no fluid in it, it might measure 2 or 3, maybe 5 psi, and that's basically just the rubber of the piston pushing back against the side. But yeah, with no fluid in it, nothing. All right. I'll hold it a pause. This, a hold, if you hold something or you pause something, it sounds like the same thing, but it is slightly different. The difference between a hold and a pause, let's say phase 2, I want to program, let's say phase 2, that 4-phase injection I just showed. And let's say I want to program in a hold, right? I want to do phase 1, and when the first phase is finished, I want the injector to stop. Right? I don't want the injection procedure to end. I just don't want to inject right now. I want to hold the injection. Right? So an injection hold is a permanent stoppage of the injection until the operator hits the go button again. Right? That is a hold. Right? And it can last 20 minutes. And it won't go again until the operator hits the button, hits the start switch. Now, a pause is the same thing, but for a predetermined length of time. But if I wanted to program a pause in phase 2, I would have to program pause and then say for 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. Then what happens is if I shoot that shot, we get to phase 2, it pauses, the little counter starts counting down, 5, 3, 2, 1. Then when it hits 0, automatically starts shooting it. The operator does not have to reinitiate. Now it's a subtle difference between a hold and a pause, but that's the difference between it. Right, now delays. These are the things, now I'm talking about, remember, there's 3 things the operator has to select, flow rate, volume, pressure limit. Then there's other things they can't select. These are the things that we're talking about now. They can't select that hold, that pause. Delays, right? Now delays, there's 2 kinds of delays, but they go by 3 different names, right? Now, the first kind of delay that I'll bring up is injector. Most of the time, they don't want to start both the imaging system and the contrast injector at the same time. I want to do one, I want to get one going, then fire the other one. Right? Now, if I want the imaging system to start doing its thing first, and so many seconds later, the injector started injecting, I need to program in an injector. 1 or 2 seconds, something like that. Now, what that does for me, we'll assume that the systems are not talking to each other, meaning the injector and the X-ray system are talking to each other. You have 2 buttons you have to hit. You have to hit X-ray exposure, and you have to hit inject switch, right? If I want there to be a 2-second delay of the injector, if I don't program in the delay, I have to hit the exposure switch, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, then hit the X-ray or the inject switch, right? It's a little, it lacks precision, right? So what we can do is program in 2-second injector. Now what I do is I hit both buttons at the same time. Hit the exposure switch, hit the inject switch. The exposure switch, the image system starts its thing. The injector switch, injector delay starts counting down. And 2 seconds, bang, it starts going. Okay, so that's injector. And that's the easy one. They're both easy, but that's the easier one to do. It's called injector, like CT, angio, and MRI injectors. All 3 types, auto injector. Is the kind. So now we talked about how we want the injector, the imaging system to start, and later the injector system to kick in. The exact opposite of that. I want the injector to start, so many seconds later I want the imaging system to kick in. And the other way goes by 2 different names. There's X-ray delay and there's scan delay. For angio injectors, it's generally called X-ray delay. We'll program in an X-ray delay. So many seconds, and that same exact thing. Hit the buttons. The imaging system starts, or the injector starts injecting, imaging system starts imaging. Okay? That's just for angio. It's called X-ray delay. For CT systems and for MRI systems, it's not called X-ray delay. It's called scan delay. And I assume it's because it's a CT scan. And it's because it's an MRI scan. So they call it X-ray delay. Well, first of all, MRI doesn't use X-ray, so they don't. It's the same exact concept. They just use the term scan delay instead of X-ray. Now, for these to work, the scan delay and the X-ray delay, the imaging systems do actually have to be. These don't really work. The X-ray system delay doesn't work if they're not talking to each other. That only happens if they're in speech. And Ryan, what's the percentage of interface, non-interface?
I mean, for angio, it's pretty high. For CT, it's
Not interface or interface?
interface. Yeah, that's just Cardiac cath, not so much, but angiography, I'd say easily 75 to 90%. CT, on the other hand, is probably less than 50% interface.
MRI does not interface. MRI injectors don't have escapes. I assume that's in the MRI system. They don't interface. You know what? How much time we got? We're going till 3, right? Yeah, we got plenty of time. My son, I can't watch, and many of you guys probably like this too. My wife loves medical shows. She watches all of them. I watch none of them. It's for the same reason I can't watch most movies about military or things like that. It's just when you work in the hospital, you know how things work, and then you're really sitting there watching, ELR or what, and they're like, what is raising that? He's like, what is that? My son, trust me, this gets to a point. We're in England. My wife's British. We were in England all the time. Years ago, when my son was little, he was like 5 years old. We ended up going to a movie set. It was that base that I was actually stationed at, right? Little Rissington in the hospital thing. They were filming part of a James Bond movie. And the flight line, they had all sorts of fake glaciers made of styrofoam and stuff like that. And they had Aston Martin, James Bond was, racing around on that icebergs for whatever reason. And anyways, my son and my daughter, they got pictures there, pictures taken there, and let my kids sit in the Aston Martin. So a couple years later, 3 or 4 years later, sitting at home, and my son's sitting down watching TV, and the James Bond movie comes on. He goes, Dad, this is the movie that you want to visit. Watch it with me. Okay, I'll watch it with you. I'm not a big James Bond fan, but yeah. Oh, your 8-year-old son wants to watch TV with you? Yeah. So anyway, there's a part of the movie where they're in the hospital. And James Bond is in the MRI room. And the bad guy runs into the MRI room with his gun. And James Bond looks on the wall. There's a button. It's a magnet. Off and on. So he hits the on switch. The gun flies out of the bad guy's hand, sticks to the gantry of the MRI system. So the bad guy, realizing he's in the room with James Bond and not armed anymore, goes running out. And James Bond hits the off switch, the gun drops, and he scoops the gun up in midair and takes off after it. Stood up and said, I'm out. Can't do this. Can't do this. Enjoy the movie, buddy. Oh, God. All right.